Saudi Arabia will host the 2034 World Cup, marking the return of the world's biggest sporting spectacle to the Gulf region for the second time in 15 years. The decision is being seen as a major victory for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's push to improve the country's image and attract tourists. For more, let's go to Bloomberg Saudi Bureau Chief Christine Burke, who is standing by in Riyadh. So, Christine, take us through what we do know about the kingdom's plans and what this could look like.
Well, in typical Saudi Arabia fashion, the kingdom's plans for this World Cup are big. So the country has said that it's going to have 15 different stadiums across 5 different cities to host these games. And those cities not only include here in the capital of Riyadh, but in the coastal city of Jeddah, and even in some far off locations like Neom, for example, Abha, which is a place I'm sure not many of our viewers have even heard of. Now, we don't know how much investment the kingdom is planning to earmark for such a massive plan, but it is information that we are looking out for, and I'm sure it's going to be pretty big, because not only does the kingdom plan to build 11 of these stadiums from scratch, but also the kingdom is going to need to work pretty hard to improve connectivity throughout the country in order to allow these fans to get around. And I can tell you firsthand that there's not great connectivity here at the moment, so that'll be one thing that we're working to report on in the months to come, is what kind of price tag we're looking at for Saudi Arabia to host this thing. I think the other crucial question that people are asking at this moment in time is, when is the World Cup actually going to happen? Saudi Arabia's sports minister said yesterday that the decision on the timing of the 2034 World Cup hasn't yet been decided, and that's ultimately going to come from FIFA. But I think we're all but certain to see that we're going to have another Winter World Cup, which is what we saw in Qatar in 2022. And of course, we got that Winter World Cup because of the climate here in the Middle East.
I would hope it's in winter. I can't imagine playing it in summer. But Christine, you mentioned the 2022 World Cup. There was a bit of controversy around that for Qatar. There's already been a bit of controversy around this decision. Excuse me. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, look, I don't think anyone out there, isn't under the impression that this is not a controversial decision. It clearly is, and we had seen in the run-up to this a lot of noise out there, if you will, around the potential for Saudi Arabia to host. Human rights advocacy groups have argued that Saudi Arabia will almost certainly need to rely on forced labor and will exploit migrant workers in order to get all of this World Cup construction done. In the run-up to the decision by FIFA, we also saw 2 U.S. senators that came out and asked FIFA to reject Saudi Arabia's bid on the grounds that it has a poor human rights record. Now, as you mentioned, this is not dissimilar to what we experienced in the run-up to the Qatar World Cup. That country also faced a lot of criticism, and we know actually, based on comments from Qatar specifically, that there were 400 to 500 at least migrant deaths due to construction for the World Cup. There was also some criticism for Qatar around LGBTQ rights. There was also a ban on alcohol in stadiums. So definitely those are some of the things that we can continue to be a part of the narrative around this World Cup in Saudi. But I think at the end of the day, what Saudi Arabia is hoping is that by hosting a World Cup, it will be able to further its Vision 2030 agenda to diversify the economy away from oil and to bring in more tourists. Tourism is such a huge part of what Saudi Arabia is trying to do. It wants to become a top tourist destination. And if we look to Qatar, Qatar actually saw its tourism arrivals increase 58% in the year after the World Cup. So even though that was also shrouded in controversy, it still put Qatar on the map, at least a little bit more than it had been before.